retire. It's actually because of your radical left-wing agenda. You supported putting tampons in boys' bathrooms. You advocated for the disarming of Americans of their Second Amendment rights. You're pro-sanctuary city, as we have uncovered here today. You claim there is no guarantee to free speech when it comes to misinformation and hate speech. That right there is why the American people have such a hard time with you. It's not because we're crazy MAGA people. It's because of your radical left-wing agenda. I want to ask you on that last one where you claim there's no guarantee to free speech. Did you pick that up on one of your 30 trips to communist China, Governor? That sounds a lot like something that they would do. Yes or no?
So I don't believe hate speech has a place in there. Hate speech that incites violence.
Governor Walz, you said that Kamala Harris picked you for vice president to code talk to white guys. How did that work out for this administration? How well did you do with white guys?
I don't have the data.
You lost by 22 points to white guys. And it's because you talk like the way you do, you say the things you do, and you have this radical left-wing ideology. So if you want to continue that rhetoric, go on, brother. Keep doing it. We'll keep destroying you in elections.
And
Thank you, and I yield back.
The people of Minnesota will continue to have me serve them.
Chair recognizes Ms. Ramirez from Illinois.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to start by acknowledging Governor Pritzker from our great state of Illinois and thank him for coming before the committee, especially given the deeply unserious nature of this hearing. I want to start by asking Governor Pritzker a few questions. Governor, you have said that actions that bring all branches of government to stand in respect of one another underpin the guardrails of democracy. Is it your assessment that this administration's actions reflect the commitment to stand in respect of all branches of government or honor the guardrails of our democracy?
Thank you very much, Congresswoman, and it's good to see you. This administration has ignored court orders. This administration has ignored the laws that have been passed by the Congress. This administration is, in many ways, telling its agencies not to follow what the laws and the regulations that have been on the books. And this administration has been going after people individually and as groups that they believe are opponents of theirs, political opponents of theirs. That is not the way that a president ought to operate. We ought to have a president who follows the rule of law and doesn't break it.
Thank you, Governor. I agree with you. In your 2025 budget address, you noted that our state, the state of Illinois, is among the best in the nation for workforce talent, clean energy, educational and scientific institutions, and more. I couldn't agree with you more. Our economy is over $1.1 trillion, the fifth largest in the U.S. and the 18th largest in the world. And I understand that we are one of only 9 states, including New York and Minnesota, whose taxpayers contribute more to the federal government than they receive. So I just want to make sure I put that to the record. This is who we're putting here at a hearing. Governor, earlier this year, you noted that the authoritarian playbook is laid bare here. They point to a group of people who don't look like you, and then they tell you to blame them for your problems. Governor Pritzker, do you believe that the Trump administration is using the authoritarian playbook, particularly as it relates to immigrant communities across the country?
It's clear when you look at every action that they've taken with regard to immigration since they've taken office, including going in and attacking our communities in the state of Illinois. I think in the first week in office, Tom Homan bringing Dr. Phil with him unseriously, and then bringing the very serious ICE officials in to break down doors, to scare communities, to keep people from going to work and so on. It is clear that they are targeting communities of people who don't look like them and going after people that they think are opponents of theirs, or
including United States senators, Governor.
Including, thank you, and Alex Padilla. And by the way, I want to say to all of you on both sides, but particularly those on the Republican side, that I cannot believe the disrespect that was shown to a United States senator who was thrown down, handcuffed, and not allowed to ask a question of our Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. That seems completely irrational.
Governor, I agree with you, and because I have a limited time, I actually want to show the footage, because I think what you're saying has to be seen here. I'm going to ask now that we play a clip of Senator Padilla being wrongfully arrested while we're in this hearing. Go ahead and play it. A United States Senator. I want to make sure that people see.
Get on my hands. Go ahead. Put me behind my back.
All right. Cool. One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat. Other hand, sir. Other hand. There's no recording allowed out here. I do not know. There's no recording allowed out here per guy rights.
They don't want you recording so that you don't see how they violate due process repeatedly. I want to make sure that you see that footage. This is a United States Senator asking a question of Secretary Noem, and in return, he is pulled from the press conference, shoved down to the floor, slammed to the ground with handcuffs, arrested for doing his job of oversight. So let me go ahead and make sure that I say this clear, because I serve in Homeland Security, and I can tell you for a fact, they are weaponizing the government and the military against U.S. citizens to exert control and suppress dissent. I call that authoritarianism. We've seen it before. Here's the point: terror. That's what they're doing here. This hearing is a witch hunt against the governors that run successful cities, and we need to call it what it is. What we need here right now is Secretary Noem answering questions and oversight on why the hell she thinks that what happened to the senator is acceptable. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Hopefully you'll get to see the beginning of that tape when he approached the podium where the secretary was. You hadn't seen
To
that
ask
yet?
a question.
Mr. Chairman, on the full statement of the committee on the Democratic side, Senator Padilla is currently in Los Angeles exercising his duty to perform congressional oversight of the federal government operations in Los Angeles and across California. He was in the Wilshire Federal Building to receive a briefing with General Guillot and was listening to Secretary Noem's press conference. He tried to ask the secretary a question and was forcibly removed by federal agents, forced to the ground, as you saw, and handcuffed. He is not currently detained, and we are working to get additional information. And while we respect the Senate's ability to review this as a primary investigation, we also echo Ms. Ramirez's statement that we would like to have an investigation of that incident here from beginning to end.
You want to enter that into the record?
I do.
All right, without objection, so ordered. Now, Chair recognizes Mr. Jack. Okay, wait a minute. We did two Republicans, so we're going to go to Mr. Goldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would urge you to reserve comment on what happened to Mr. Padilla until you get full information. In fact, I would urge all of my Republican colleagues to take a breath before you once again desperately run to bend the knee to Donald Trump and to Kristi Noem. Because anyone with two eyes that can see that that was authoritarian, lawless behavior that no person in America, much less a senator conducting constitutional oversight, should have received. And I know it's hard for all of you to speak up against Donald Trump, and that's why we're here at this hearing talking all about Joe Biden, talking all about Joe Biden's policy this, Joe Biden's policy that, all these people who committed crimes under Joe Biden. Is it just because you're consistently trying to ignore the fact that Joe Biden is not president? Donald Trump is president. And what he's doing right now, which you all know, is he is going after people who are lawfully present. Now, I appreciate the governor's being here. I'm sorry you have to deal with this crap. Governor Hochul, especially, I want you to know, as a proud member of the delegation of your state, I am not going to use my 5 minutes to mount a campaign for governor against you, as my colleague from the North Country chose to do. I will give you the opportunity to actually answer some questions, unlike she did. And I will allow you to explain exactly what the policies in New York are as it relates to cooperation between the state and federal agents.
First of all, glad you're not running against me. Thank you. Secondly, I appreciate the opportunity to break through all the noise here today and to stop the talking points that keep mischaracterizing our policies in the great state of New York. New York is not a sanctuary or a haven for criminals. We devote an enormous amount of our energy working to keep New Yorkers safe. $2.5 billion I've allocated just in the last few years. We do cooperate with ICE when it comes to investigating or building a case against criminals. We do this all the time. And when someone goes through the criminal justice system in the state of New York, they do their time in prison. We alert ICE as to when, 30 days in advance of when they're to be removed, and we send them away. That's how it's supposed to work. But what we do not do under our laws is divert our essential resources to protect everyday New Yorkers from crimes themselves and have that help ICE with civil immigration enforcement. That is their job. That is the federal government's job. And we cannot be told to enforce federal laws. It's not constitutional.
Or to use all your limited resources to spend all that time doing their job.
My concern is that every minute that ICE officers are going after moms and dads and kids and separating families, perhaps one more criminal is still out there at large.
Well, it's
Why
funny
don't you
say that.
focus
I'm
on
sorry,
them?
Sorry to interrupt you, because I actually, in my district office down in Lower Manhattan, witnessed ICE officers waiting for immigrants to come out of a courtroom. These are immigrants who have asylum applications. And I'm sure you agree with me that asylum is a lawful pathway to immigrate to this country. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So in order to make these immigrants here unlawfully, the DHS is now dismissing their cases, their own removal proceedings against them, to void out the asylum process, the asylum claim. That way, when they go downstairs in the elevator, there are ICE agents that can be there and to arrest them and put them in expedited removal. And they don't have an asylum claim that is live anymore because they've just voided it out. These are non-criminal, these are non-violent immigrants who are here going through lawful process. And this is who the Trump administration is going after every single day. It's a disgrace. You said you were going to go after the worst of the worst. You were going to go after convicted criminals. You're here questioning about all these criminals. You're going after people who actually are going through the lawful process you say they should. But just because Donald Trump and Stephen Miller need to bump up their numbers because they can't do a good enough job in actually finding convicted criminals, you're going after moms, dads, separating parents from children. You have a voice, Republicans. Speak up. I yield back.
Now Chair recognizes Mr. Jack.
Is he here?
Okay, Mr. McGuire from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a yes or no question, hopefully fast because I don't have much time. So each witness one at a time. If you break the law, are you a criminal? Can you guys answer that quickly? We don't have much time.
In certain circumstances, many
The answer
circumstances,
should
yes.
be yes. If you come across our border illegally, breaking our law to come across, are you a criminal? Yes
If you
or no?
speed, are you a criminal? I mean,
Break the
that's,
law, that's a crime.
okay.
So if you
Call
come
them a
across our
criminal.
border illegally, you're a criminal. Just want to see if we can get that straight. All right, Governor Pritzker, are illegal aliens counted in the U.S. Census?
Every person in the United States is counted.
The census decides how many members each state gets in the U.S. House of Representatives. Year after year, tens of thousands of U.S. Citizens are fleeing the state of Illinois. It ranks only behind Governor Hochul's New York and Governor Newsom's California. You all are protecting and harboring illegal aliens for political purposes. Governor Pritzker, would you support prohibiting illegal aliens from being counted in the census, yes or no?
Your numbers are wrong, sir.
Would you, yes or no?
Your numbers are wrong, sir.
Would you
The Constitution says
support
how you
prohibiting
count the
illegal
census.
aliens from being counted in the census? Would you? Or is harboring illegal aliens part of the strategy to get more Democrats in Congress? The bottom line is this: all illegal aliens have committed a crime and should be deported. Any additional act of violence committed by an illegal alien is entirely preventable. All sanctuary jurisdictions are unlawful. Each of you are breaking the law. And my message to you, or the message from the people, is you need to get it straight. Governor Waltz, just over 3 weeks ago, you compared ICE agents to Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo. Governor, do you regret those comments?
I regret that law enforcement is not following best practices, showing who they are, not taking people off the street, not giving due process.
We
It
would
puts
not
all
have
of
a
us at
country
risk.
without our men and women in law enforcement. Yes
That's
or no?
correct,
Did you
and
know
those who
ICE
show their
officers
faces.
are faced? Did you know ICE officers are facing 413% increase in assaults?
Don't wear the masks, identify yourself, and work with local law enforcement.
You guys are doxing them. All right, your attacks on ICE officers are putting our law enforcement in deadly situations. It led to destructive riots breaking out in Los Angeles last weekend. President Trump had no choice but to step up and stop Los Angeles from burning buildings to the ground. Did you see videos of rioters throwing rocks through the windows of police officers' vehicles while they were driving on the highway? Did you guys see that? We wouldn't have a country without our men and women in law enforcement. In 2023, you signed legislation to expand eligibility to illegal aliens for taxpayer-funded health care, Minnesota driver's license, and free college tuition. America Last policies. Let's take a look at some of the illegal aliens you so boldly want to support with taxpayer funds. I'll probably say his name wrong, but Abrahashad Alimi, illegal alien from Somalia. Criminal history includes convictions of murder, DUI, and disorderly conduct. Eric Martinez Mondragon, illegal alien from Mexico and known member of 18th Street Gang. He served time in robbery and possession of a firearm. And Marco Granda, illegal alien from Ecuador. He was convicted for criminal sexual conduct of a child. The taxpayer-funded incentives you are providing in Minnesota bring in vicious thugs who are robbing, raping, and killing your citizens. And American people are tired of these America Last Marxist policies. We need more patriotism. You know, when I look at a MAGA, to me it means make America great again for all Americans, regardless of party, race, religion, or creed. America first, and that's why we won the presidency and we got the Senate and the House. If you had a basketball team and you hate your basketball team, you will never win. And we have a heart and love all people of the world, but if we can't take care of our country, if we're allowing these illegal criminal aliens to rob, rape, and kill the American people, that is wrong. And that's why we won, and if you guys keep that up, we'll keep winning.
Congressman, can I respond to the two cases in Minnesota? I think it's important to the hearing we're having. You want to know what we're doing. Mr. Alami was held in Freeborn County Jail.
So,
Straight resources
Governor
paid for
Hochul,
that.
Debrina Kwam fell asleep on a subway in New York. While she was asleep on a train, she was set on fire and killed by an illegal alien from Guatemala. This could have been prevented. And what upsets me or strikes me the most is that in Democrat-run cities, people are so desensitized by the violence and the policies that people just stood by and watched that happen. What can we do better?
The entire situation sickens me to know that that happened in our state. I abhor all crimes, and that one was particularly heinous. And that's why my law enforcement are dedicated to keeping the streets, subways, and communities of our state safe. It's my #1 priority. It's how I've invested enormous amounts of resources. And just for the record, we do cooperate in criminal identification, prosecution, and removal of individuals who commit crimes who are not in this country legally. We want them deported. We cooperate with ICE every day of the week to make our streets safer. I'm not sure why that's not breaking through in this hearing. How many times can we say that? We're not supporting this. We don't want these individuals here. We abhor this violence and crime. So that's the message should be the takeaway. How can we work together? How can you do your job and help us secure the border and have more legal pathways for people who want to be here legally and contribute to our economy, but not the criminals. We are not a sanctuary for any criminals.
You go back.
Gentleman, time's expired. Now, Chair recognizes Ms. Morrison from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today, especially you, Governor Walz. It's great to see you as ever. Welcome back to the People's House. Thank you for your distinguished service in the National Guard, 24 years, I believe. Thank you for your service here in Congress and as our governor. I'm sorry you haven't received the warmest welcome here today, but I'd like to start by taking a moment to correct the record on a few points. I think all of us here would agree that violent criminals who aren't citizens shouldn't be in this country, full stop. But that's not what this hearing is about. This hearing is about intimidation and striking fear in immigrant communities. This hearing, unfortunately, is not about moving forward with the comprehensive immigration reform our country so desperately needs. It's about distracting the American people from the disaster that has been the first few months of the Trump administration and his Republican majority in Congress. Much like our state, my congressional district is diverse. I represent many immigrant families who call our community home, and we welcome them because they make our community stronger. I recently had the honor of attending a naturalization ceremony where we welcomed new Americans from 85 different countries. It was an incredibly moving day, an auditorium full of new Americans who were so excited and proud to join our great American project. The room was full of hope and patriotism. I could not have been more proud to welcome them and to participate in that day. We are a country of immigrants. It is what makes us strong and dynamic and unique in the world. My colleague's characterization of our state bears no resemblance to reality. Would you agree, sir? Minnesota is an incredible state with a wealth of business, industry, natural resources, beauty, and rich diversity. And it's a state where working families thrive. As you know, Governor, we worked together for 6 years when I was in the state legislature, and I am so proud of what we accomplished during that time. We delivered for the people of Minnesota the largest middle-class tax cut in the history of our state, historic investments in education, created a paid family and medical leave programs that allows working parents to care for their children and their loved ones, codifying the right to comprehensive reproductive health care, and providing school breakfast and lunches for K through 12 students so no child in Minnesota goes hungry. If we want to talk about protecting our children and families, let's talk about the chaotic tariff war President Trump started, which is serving only to make life less affordable for families and is decimating small businesses. Let's talk about the 16 million people who are going to lose their health care, or going to have their health care taken away from them by the Republicans and their ridiculously named Big Beautiful Bill. Let's talk about the millions of children who will go hungry if the Republicans are successful in taking away their food assistance. Governor Walz, since my Republican colleagues want to talk about threats to our children and families, let's talk about food insecurity. It's now been over 2 years since you signed the school meals legislation into law. What has been the impact of this program on fighting child hunger in Minnesota?
Yeah, well, thank you, Congresswoman, and we miss you in Minnesota, but glad you're here. Well, the direct impact to families is a savings of about $1,700 a year to those families that they're able to see, and mostly middle class. But the real impact is on educational achievement. Last year, Minnesota was able to notch the highest graduation rates in our state history. We also see school attendance rates go up. We see better behaviors, less discipline from it. So it's a smart investment. It's the right thing to do. And the payoff for Minnesota is we have a healthier, better educated workforce, which is why Minnesota almost always ranks near the top in quality of life indicators.
Thank you, Governor. Now I want to talk more about the Republican plan to take food assistance away from our children and families. If their budget becomes law, it will be the biggest cut to SNAP in history and jeopardize food assistance for millions of families across the country, including 100,000 Minnesotans, many of whom are children. Would you agree that the Republican proposal to cut SNAP is one of the biggest threats facing children and families in Minnesota right now?
Yes, coupled with Medicaid and Medicare cuts.
And also, Governor Walz, I just want to give you a moment to, if there's anything you'd like to clarify that's been said in this unbelievable committee hearing today. I don't even know what the adjective is.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. I know we have like 30 seconds. Look, we're here to work with you. You've heard time and time again. We have a job to do as governors. The federal government has a job to do. Not doing ICE's job is not interference or not wanting to get these people. And the gentleman asked the question and then left. The gentleman he brought up with, we held him, we paid for it, we called DHS before he was released. The second one he mentioned, DOC called DHS prior to his release. We do that every single time in Minnesota. That law has been on the books for many years, and that's how we implement it. So I just don't understand why we don't want to work together to be successful. None of us want the criminals on the street, but I certainly want immigrants in Minnesota who are contributing to our quality of life.
Gentlelady's time's expired.
Thank you, Governor.
Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Los Angeles riots are certainly a shameful explosion of lawlessness that we are once again seeing. The narrative has changed in these riots, but it's certainly the same type of actors. We're seeing businesses torched, cars torched, families uprooted, certainly communities that are scared. And this is by no means a peaceful protests. It is absolute chaos, and rioters don't get a free pass to burn down cities just simply because they're mad, because they are mad that our nation's laws are being upheld, that our federal agents are upholding their oath and doing what they were hired to do. Our first responders deserve respect. They do not deserve to have rocks thrown at them and to be injured. But, I mean, let's be honest, this violence didn't really spark in a vacuum. Sanctuary policies are a magnet for trouble. They shield criminals, undermine the rule of law. And, governors, I've sat here and I've heard you today. You say that safety is your number one priority. You want your communities safe. You want your people safe. And Governor Hochul, you just asked, how can we work together to ensure that that happens? Well, that's exactly what we want to do in this hearing. We want to work together. We want to talk to you about your sanctuary policies that are actually preventing us from working with you to keep your community safe, because we want them safe as well. I have the same policies in Colorado that restrict our local law enforcement officers from coordinating with federal agents. And some of my counties have issued lawsuits to try to end that. But this is serious, and we owe it to every American to restore safety and enforce our laws. It's been stated that this is a federal law and it's not your job to uphold the federal law. Well, we're not asking you to uphold it. We're just asking you to kind of step out of the way and allow the federal government to do the job, to uphold these laws. When you have someone, don't wait until they commit a violent, heinous crime before we know their immigration status. So now we're seeing these riots everywhere. We've heard in 2020 that everything was mostly peaceful as cities burned down, as people lost their lives, as law enforcement officers lost their lives. So I just want to ask you three governors, yes or no, is the destruction of private and governmental property, is that something that fits under your definition of a peaceful protest? Governor Walz, yes or no?
No, it does not.
Thank you. Governor Pritzker?
I find it hard to believe that you're lecturing us
Yes or
about
no?
peaceful protest. Look at what
Yes or
happened
no?
January 6th here at the Capitol.
No, what we're
The
seeing in
attack
LA
on
is
our
an
democracy.
insurrection. You want to talk about
That
an
is an
insurrection? This is an
insurrection.
absolute insurrection.
You don't
They are-
understand what insurrection
I
is
asked
when
you a
people are
yes or
trying to
no
overturn
question,
an
sir.
election
And
here
I'm showing,
at the Congress.
I started this off
You
showing
were
you
here.
the
They were
quorum, and I would
attacking you, by
respect
the way.
same. I would expect the same.
I'm answering your question. It is outrageous that
it-
you are asking
is
us
it
these
peaceful
questions
to
when you're the one condoning
to destroy
pardoning of people who attack
private and
police
government property?
right here at our
Governor
Capitol.
Governor Hochul, it's been a long day. Does that fit under your definition of a peaceful protest, the destruction of private and government property?
No, and we feel for the business owners and the community for what's going on there.
So do
But
we.
this is a
Yes
narrow
or no?
scope of
Would-
people, and the
Would
vast
lighting
majority are
police
people.
cars on fire fit under the definition of a peaceful protest?
No, we reject that. No one should be lighting police
Governor
cars
Pritzker,
on
yes or
fire.
I'm
no?
opposed to violence in any form. Yes.
Governor Walz?
Yeah, we reject that.
Okay. Throwing bricks or large rocks at police officers? Is that peaceful?
It is not.
Is that peaceful, Governor?
Whether it's in Los Angeles or here in Washington at the Capitol, no.
Yeah, that didn't happen here. Governor Hochul?
Rejected.
It actually did, but no, it's not acceptable.
Okay. Governor Pritzker, you have you or have you not called for mass protests and mobilization and disruption?
Indeed, microphones, megaphones
This was
and
this
going
was,
to the ballot box.
Well, they're responding in a much different way, are they not? President Trump also
Peaceful
asked for people
protest
to
is the history of this
peacefully
country.
make their voices heard. So it's okay for you to say that and hold that standard, but President Trump has a different standard when he actually makes the claim.
Inciting
peaceful,
riots at
and
the
you
Capitol?
said
Yes,
you want
there
mass
is a difference
protests,
between the two.
mobilizations, and disruption as a response to President Trump's policies. I just think that this is all hypocritical. You've called in your National Guard. You don't want President Trump to come in and enforce the rule of law to keep communities safe, and your destructive policies are harming American citizens. We should not have to wait until violence is committed to find out their legal status. We have 2 million unknown gotaways because of Joe Biden's administration, and we have got to find them and get them out of America, and I thank President Trump and his administration for doing just that. I yield.
Gentlelady yields. Chair recognizes Mr. Craig from Minnesota.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for allowing me to wave on to this committee today. I think if I were a permanent member, I'd have a permanent headache.
Well, you won't have to worry about it, but go
Governor
ahead.
Walz, it is so good to see you today. Let me start by saying that we should all be against chaos. We all are for a safe and secure border and an orderly immigration system. What we're seeing now, though, is chaos out of the current administration with their blatant disregard for due process and their indiscriminate immigration executive orders. In fact, the Trump administration's Department of Homeland Security had to take down its posted sanctuary jurisdictions list because it created mass confusion in Minnesota for local officials and was opposed by local law enforcement. And so, Governor Walz, let me just start, just so we know the record is correct. I didn't think Minnesota was a sanctuary state. Is Minnesota a sanctuary state, Governor?
We are not. The legislature has passed no such law, and I have signed no such law, and we follow all federal law.
Thank you, sir. That list included 20 counties when it came out across Minnesota without any rhyme or reason, including LeSueur County, which I represent. I've inquired into why they are listed from DHS, but still absolutely no answers. Governor Walz, I thought it might be helpful to point out that according to the FBI's own 2023 data, Minnesota has fewer violent incidents per 100,000 than states such as Tennessee, Louisiana, Missouri, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, I'm going to repeat that again, Georgia, and Ohio. Why do you think that our state has been able to maintain a lower crime rate than other states?
Well, thank you, Congresswoman, and we are at a 30-year low on serious crimes, and as you said, we can
years as a law enforcement officer in the state of Minnesota. You know that, right? Do you know that, yes or no?
I
Not a
don't know
trick
how many.
question. It's not a trick
Congressman,
question.
I don't know
I'll
how many
answer it for you.
years.
23 years in Duluth.
Thank you for that.
So, Governor, do you recognize this picture?
I do recognize the picture.
Briefly describe it to us. What is it? What's going on?
These were folks, I believe the people in the picture now are incarcerated in Minnesota.
It's a
to the best
precinct
of
3
my-
burning down because of your decision. Was this a peaceful protest? Was this a peaceful protest?
The gentleman standing there?
Was this a
That was a-
peaceful protest?
It was a criminal act that people were prosecuted for.
So it wasn't a peaceful protest, right? As I watched lawlessness devastate Los Angeles this past week, I was reminded of your failure to protect Minnesota from similar riots. Governor Walz, on May 29th of 2020, during your own press conference, you described your response to the riots during the 2020 Summer of Love as, quote, an abject failure. Governor, I couldn't agree with you more.
That's out of context,
And
Congressman.
on May 17th, 2025, you were at the law school, graduating Minnesota Law School, talking to the graduates. And we've talked about this. You called the enforcement of illegal immigrants a modern-day Gestapo. You've been asked 3-4 times if you would rescind that, and you won't. Will you rescind it? This is like the 5th time, yes or no?
Congressman, I was talking to law students about due process, and I
So
said
you won't rescind it.
you took an oath to due process.
Governor, was there a violent al-Shabaab terrorist who entered our country illegally, arrested in Minneapolis last year? Yes, there was. Were there 3 illegal child predators arrested by ICE in St. Paul earlier this year?
I certainly hope so. That's their job.
Yes, there was. Are the officers who arrested the al-Shabaab terrorists or the child predators, are they Nazis or the Gestapo?
The tactics of wearing
They're
masks.
not.
The tactics of wearing masks.
Why did you,
unidentified.
why did you
process.
tell us that they were the Gestapo? Do you believe that any of the violent illegal immigrants I have mentioned have a right to be in this country?
I don't know what their immigration status was.
They're illegal, violent criminals that ICE took off the streets of Minneapolis.
You did not say,
Last week,
Congressman, what their status
Governor,
was.
last week, law enforcement officers in the state of Minnesota took 900 pounds of meth off the streets. Do you support that?
We certainly do.
Do you know that
Fentanyl,
ICE?
other things.
Do you know that ICE assisted in that those arrests and investigations? Do you support the assistance of ICE in that enforcement action? Yes or no?
I can't speak to that because we were not included in the briefing.
You don't know if ICE was part of it? I'm telling you, they were.
I don't have that data. I would have to trust you.
Will you apologize to our constituents and law enforcement officers for making them and their families less safe with your incendiary actions?
I'll congratulate them that they helped us work on the largest pension bill for
Governor.
Minnesota law enforcement in
Governor.
30 years.
Claiming my time. Governor, what weapons did you carry in war?
Congressman, for 24 years, I carried.
No. What weapons did you carry in war?
What did you carry in
What
uniform?
I
You
tell you
know I
what, Governor,
misspoke.
you're
You know I
barking down the
misspoke.
wrong tree, okay?
You know I
You
misspoke.
lied to the Minnesotans. You said that you carried weapons in war.
Mr.
That
Chairman.
is stolen valor. You know what? My wife served 25,
Mr. Chairman,
24 years in the
Iraq-
military.
a little
bit of respect for the
and
witness.
she's an Iraq war veteran.
You know what I mean?
She was
This
over in
hectoring is
the
not-
war
not-
zone. That's
On
a
a point
stolen
of-
valor, and I'm so
Point of order,
disgusted with
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
And so are the people that you served
Point
with.
of order.
Point of order.
That's stolen
Halt
valor.
just a minute. State
Stolen
point.
valor.
Mr.
You didn't
Chairman,
carry weapons
that's
in
not questioning
war.
the witness.
Congressman, my 24 years was
That's not
public
Will you
for many, many
apologize
years.
for lying?
Objection.
Will you
know I misspoke.
apologize for lying?
Objection.
All right, hold on, pause.
That's not questioning a witness. That's not questioning a witness. You think
Point of
so,
order.
huh?
State your point, Mr. Rankin.
No, you're
State
yelling
your
at
point.
him. You're
There we
hectoring.
go.
You're hectoring. You're hectoring.
All right.
You're hectoring.
State your
Governor,
point.
you didn't carry
That's
weapons
not-
in war, did you?
State your point.
You didn't
Proceed.
carry
You
weapons
got
in war.
24 seconds.
Did you?
Congressman, you
You
know I
didn't carry
misspoke.
weapons in war, yes or no?
Thank you.
You lied. Governor, what rank did you retire at?
I
What rank
served,
did you retire at?
Congressman, I served my battalion as the command sergeant
That's
major.
not the
and
question
for
I
pay-
asked. What rank did you retire at?
I retired as a master sergeant in
Okay, here's your coin that says you're retired at a command sergeant major. That's
Says
your
I wore
challenge
that.
coin.
It
This
says
is-
I wore the rank.
This is, yeah, that's right. You didn't retire, did you?
I did
Stolen
retire after
valor.
24 years.
Here is a picture of your coin, your challenge
Please,
coin.
Brian.
I'm disgusted with you. I'm just,
Mr.
Governor,
Chairman, the
you
time
lie
has
when the
expired.
truth-
Congressman,
you lie
I'm-
when the
Gentleman's
truth is
time's
better.
expired.
You called half Trump supporters Nazis and fascists, and you know what? That's why the Minnesota Police and Peace Association did not support you in the last election because
Oh, I
you're missing
support
in
them.
action.
Gentleman's time's expired.
On behalf of the folks from the land of rocks and cows, thank you. Now you're back.
Chair recognizes Ms. Tenney from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to wave onto this committee for this important oversight committee hearing, and happy to have the governors here to hopefully answer some questions, and just to address a couple things that I've heard in this committee hearing. I haven't appeared on oversight before. I do serve in a much milder Ways and Means Committee, but I just want to say a couple things about what this committee, what we're doing today, and about sanctuary cities. We are all children of immigrants. My grandparents met at Ellis Island. They sat in quarantine. They came from other countries. They came here to work. That's not what this is about. This hearing is about people who have taken advantage of our borders and our country, who have come in as illegal cartels, who have overrun our northern border, which is part of my district in upstate New York, in New York 24. And these people have taken operational control of our southern and our northern border. And we need our governors to make sure that they're providing the law enforcement backup to our ICE agents and others, and not assisting and aiding and abetting in such a way to these illegal immigrants, particularly the cartels. And I think one of the most important things, I'm sick of hearing everyone defaming my constituent, actually, Tom Homan, who's doing an excellent job and who served our country honorably. His big concern, and I think it's a big concern for me, because when I served in the state legislature, Governor Hochul wasn't there as either the lieutenant governor or the governor, but I was one of the leaders on human trafficking. And one of the important questions that Tom Homan talked about repeatedly is, where are the 300,000 children who were human trafficked by people who are profiting off of this human trafficking? Not just drug trafficking, human trafficking, innocent children all through our interior. We don't know where they are. Those are the people that I'm concerned about. And what ICE is trying to do is get to those people who are taking these children and profiting off them and having no regard. And that's what worries me the most, is we've gotten off track on a number of things. And what concerns me is we have this defund and demoralize the police movement brought to a level where we're defunding and demoralizing ICE agents who are simply doing their job to protect our borders. And what concerns me is, and I know Governor Hochul, and obviously I'm going to address you because you're my governor, people have addressed the billions of dollars that New York State taxpayers, by the way, the highest taxed taxpayers in the entire nation now. We're always in a struggle with California, who's more, who's less, and I think we're winning out this race now. Not a good distinction, by the way. Not a good distinction to have a northern border that's overrun by people who are human trafficking, bringing illicit drugs into our communities. I've had three parents in my community, my own home community, where their sons died of overdoses because of illegal fentanyl. So these are real issues that are coming from people that are coming across our borders. So we know we've spent billions of dollars on all kinds of illegal immigrants in New York State. The estimate is between New York City and New York State, it's about $7 billion, and that's New York taxpayer dollars. Those are my tax dollars, people constituents I serve who go to work every day. And all we're trying to do is keep these communities safe. And you mentioned that, Governor Hochul, that you were talking about keeping these communities safe. But I'm going to ask you a question. And I've got a series of questions, and some of them have been asked by my colleagues. But I want to ask you right now, because you're the governor of our state, and you've been presiding over a pretty disastrous situation with our prisons, and many of those prisons, including one of the maximum security prisons, is actually in my district, and a number of other facilities. Are there any criminal, illegal gang members in the New York State prison system right now? Just yes, if there are.
No, Congressman,
and
I
know
want
how many, and if you can't get me the answer, can your staff provide us with a general information on that?
No, I'll tell you this. I totally agree with you, Congresswoman, that more needs to be done to protect our border. We've asked for support from the federal government for the border that you represent and I know so well. I've had to deploy $8 million of my own state dollars to amp up the
Well, there are
enforcement.
state dollars, but let me just take this
But
back.
to
Let me
help
ask
with
you
human
back about
trafficking.
let me get to the prisons, because I want to get into another thing. Are there criminal, illegal immigrant gang members in the New York State prison system right now?
If there are, there will be a
Do you know?
30-day.
So you don't know.
I don't
Yes, do you know if
Of course
there are?
I'm sure there are.
But
That's
do you know
why
how- can
I've
you
already
just-
sent
that's all I wanted to know. Can you get
I've
me the
already
number?
had ICE take 1,300 of them upon the
I'm
completion
not
of the
asking you
sentence.
that. I'm
So I
asking
have
you,
no
can we
doubt
get
that
the
there's some there.
information about how many of these, whether they're Trende Aragua, whether they're MS-13, Crips, Bloods? I've toured the prisons. I've seen, people that they line up in rows. I want to know how many of our illegal immigrants that are putting not only other inmates at risk, but also our prison guards who are at risk. Because right now, these types of people are in our prison system are putting our corrections officers at risk. And by you shutting down and cutting off the ability of our corrections officers who are trained to deal with these kind of people there, we're losing the ability of having the trained people there. And our National Guard are wonderful people who serve our communities, but they're not trained to be able to do this, and many of them are underage in that. Can I get the information from you on that?
Certainly, and again, I just want to reaffirm that if there's someone convicted of a crime in our prison, they will be deported. We let ICE know 30 days before the end of their sentence, and that's why I've sent 1,300 people already, just since I've been governor, out of our country. I don't want them here any more than you do,
Okay, can I just
Congresswoman.
ask you one last, because you talked about you don't support a sanctuary city. Right now, you were lieutenant governor when this was signed into law under Governor Cuomo. We have the green light law. It prohibits the local DMVs, gives driver's licenses to illegal aliens, which you once didn't support, but now you do. You've admitted that today. Under the green light law, would you support repealing the green light law so that we could allow ICE agents to work with our DMV to find out when these people drive across the Canadian border and they have a carload full of innocent children and they can't find any information on them because they get a legal license? Can you just give me that information?
Last question, but feel free to answer it.
We
Governor.
absolutely share information on such situations with ICE. That is our job.
Do you
We
support
provide-
repealing the green light
Get a
law?
lady's time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your indulgence for letting me wave on the committee today. I know it's been a long day. I want to welcome our governors here today. Thank you. Governor Pritzker, on behalf of my constituents and myself, I have serious concerns about the current state of Illinois and the continued direction your administration is taking when it comes to sanctuary policies. And I know we've talked a lot about that today. And I want to be clear, your sweeping sanctuary policies are not just misguided in my view, I think they're dangerous. Your agenda puts ideology above public safety, ties the hands of law enforcement, and signals to violent, criminal, illegal immigrants that Illinois is a safe haven. Your administration has made the state of Illinois among the national outliers to defy federal law. And you've doubled down on policies like Illinois Way Forward Act, which is legislation you proposed and signed that prohibits local law enforcement from cooperating with ICE, even in cases involving violent criminals. And I think, hearing you today, I think you honestly believe that refusing to turn over convicted felons to federal authorities makes our community safer. And I'll tell you, Governor, it doesn't. And as a former federal and state prosecutor who's worked very closely with law enforcement, none of that makes us safer or makes law enforcement feel comfortable. Instead of working with federal law enforcement to remove dangerous individuals from our streets in Chicago and across Illinois, you're creating bureaucratic roadblocks and political cover. And in my view, that's not leadership, it's government malpractice. Illinois families are already struggling with the highest combined state and local tax burden in the country. And they should not be forced to subsidize over $2.5 billion in Illinois taxpayer money that's been spent on illegal immigrants over the last 4 years under your sanctuary policies in Illinois. I want to mention two specific cases, although I could talk about a lot more. A tragic case involving the family of George Levin, a 63-year-old man who was murdered by a pair of illegal immigrants who were arrested in Chicago in January. He was found bound with duct tape and his legs tied with an extension cord. The title of an article was "Two Migrant Men Beat Chicago Businessmen to Death, Left Him Bound, Gagged," prosecutors say, dated February 1st, 2025. Again, under your sanctuary policies in the state of Illinois. I'd like to submit that for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection to ordered.
Second one is a case of two families, and I want to highlight Chloe Polzon and, of course, Catherine Abraham, two girls in their early 20s that were killed in a fatal hit and run by an illegal immigrant in Urbana, Illinois. And again, the title from that article, Glenview family seeks justice after migrant suspect kills daughter and friend in Urbana hit and run. I'd like to submit that for the record.
Without
also.
objection to ordered.
And so, Governor, I guess a question for you. As you hear these stories, and there's many others, does it cause you to rethink your sanctuary city policies or regret some of the policies you've taken as it relates to sanctuary cities?
Thank you, Congressman. I'm glad to see you here. I know you were unwilling to meet with your constituents about the Medicaid cuts that you voted for.
So answer the question. I thought you might not answer the question whether I'm going to reclaim my time because you did not answer the question, which I thought you would. When I asked, when you hear about victims that suffer violence because of illegal migrants in a sanctuary city state, you said no, it hasn't caused you to rethink. Reclaiming my time. Now, Governor Pritzker, you mentioned reclaiming my time. I have the time. I have the time.
All the federal government. You all have the ability to fix this.
Governor Pritzker, earlier.
Do your job. Do your job, Congressman.
Yeah, I would deflect too instead of answer those questions. Now, you said earlier, in a response to a question from Chairman Comer, that you have been critical and had been critical of President Biden and his border policies. And you cited a letter, October 2nd, 2023, that you authored. So I pulled the letter, and I was looking for this criticism of the Biden border policy. 3 pages, nothing in there. Now, I'm going to submit for the record so everybody can see it. October 2nd, 2023, letter from J.B. Pritzker to President Biden. Not one mention of being critical of the border.
Without objection to ordered.
Thank you. Now,
Public statements on national programs about this.
It's not your time. Governor Pritzker, it was mentioned earlier, all these rosy statistics about Illinois, but I want to mention a couple that weren't mentioned. Illinois is the leader in outmigration of people leaving the state of Illinois. We've led, for the last 4 years, 5 years, people want to leave the state of Illinois. We lost a congressional seat, as you're well aware. We have the lowest population in the city of Chicago now than in 100 years. People continue to flee Illinois. We have the 5th highest unemployment rate in the country, the 2nd highest property tax rate in the country, the 5th highest illegal immigration population in the country, with over 500,000 illegal immigrants leaving in Illinois. None of that got mentioned before, but that's the reality. And to be honest with you, Governor Pritzker, I wish you didn't have to be here today as my governor. I really do. But unfortunately, because of your failed policies, you have spotlighted Illinois, and that truly is unfortunate, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Congressman, half of that is completely false and needs to be corrected, and I will if given the moment to speak. Our population is increasing. We have a higher population as a result of the census that was done in 2020. It was your Republican governor.
Governor, you'll have time to answer that.
You were part of those policies. We are turning the state around.
Chair recognizes Mr. Jack.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the last questioner today, Mr. Walls, I think you're not going to need any more Diet Mountain Dew after this. But do you, just one thing, just to kind of bring this entire hearing back into the perspective, just to help us understand and this committee understand the policies of your administrations. We'll start with you, Governor Walls. Do you accept U.S. code, which establishes that improper entry into our country is illegal and enforceable by the federal government?
Improper entry, meaning not asking for
illegally crossing is an illegal act and therefore a criminal act.
Civil in some cases, criminal as the government does it. Yes.
Thank you. Governor Pritzker?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure, no question. So just establishing that your administration respects that U.S. code believes, U.S. code affirms, and your administration believes that improper entry into our country is an illegal act and therefore criminal.
As the federal code says, we believe it, yeah, when we follow it.
Thank you, Governor. And Governor Hochul?
Depends how the federal immigration authorities enforce it. Sometimes it's civil, sometimes they do it on the criminal side. It's up to them to make that determination.
Thank you. One of the reasons why we just want to establish that is with respect to illegal immigration, I mean, you were elected in your states, but your state's policies affect my state in Georgia, affect my constituents in Georgia, because when you create policies that incentivize illegal immigration, incentivize folks crossing illegally and being criminals into our country, it challenges, it presents challenges to us, and it presents challenges to our ability to protect our constituents. In my district, every single person on this panel, Republican and Democrat, has a story, a painful story, about how an illegal immigrant or many illegal immigrants have taken lives of those within our districts. In fact, in my district alone, in Columbus, Georgia, Dr. Malcolm Goodchild was killed by a drunk driver illegally here in our country. Of course, we talked about Lake and Riley. My colleagues have done that ad nauseum. So we also talk about the financial burden that's associated with those of us that represent folks in Georgia and your states as well. In Georgia alone, I just want for the record to note that $563 has been associated with the increased costs and increased burdens of my constituents because of illegal immigrants within our state. In our closing time, Governor Pritzker, we had Mayor Brandon Johnson testify before us, and I know you've at times expressed concerns about how he's run his administration in Chicago. I'm just curious if you support one of the things we talked about in this committee, perhaps you prepared for it, was a directive that he sent to Chicago police directing them not to cooperate with federal law enforcement enforcing immigration operations. Do you support that action from Mayor Johnson?
I support actions that follow the law of the state of Illinois and the federal law.
Do you think Mayor Johnson has done a good job with respect to law enforcement in his city?
Law enforcement has improved markedly since the choice of Larry Snelling as the superintendent of police in the city of Chicago.
What grade would you give A to F Mayor Johnson with respect to law enforcement in his city?
I wouldn't grade the mayor. I will say that Larry Snelling is doing an excellent job as superintendent.
Thank you. Governor Walz, I think you bring an interesting perspective to this conversation because you were just a candidate for national office on a ticket that lost. Exit polls from 2024 show a clear bipartisan majority of Americans trust President Trump to effectively handle immigration. Recent polling affirms Americans overwhelmingly support President Trump's immigration policies by a 30% margin. Even CBS published a survey that shows 6 out of 10 Americans say it is very important to deport illegal aliens. And of course, we've established that anyone crossing the border is, in fact, a criminal. So, Governor Walz, I'm just curious, given Americans' overwhelming support of President Trump's immigration policies, do you believe your record on immigration is one of the reasons you lost the vice presidency?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with the polls you're talking about. I can only speak to Minnesota that there's an anger about how it's being carried out. No one disagrees that we need an immigration reform and we need to fix it. What they don't see is whether it's a United States senator being taken down for asking a question or whether it's a 4-year-old girl with cancer being sent out of the country. Well, that's the frustration.
Put another way, I'm just curious. I mean, you were on a national ticket that lost, and I'm curious, why do you believe, what issues do you believe you failed to litigate properly with the American voters?
Oh, I'll let history relitigate that.
Fair enough. And I'll just close, Governor Walz, if I could. You know, one of the concerns that's been raised about why illegal immigration was so bad under President Biden is that he just cognitively was not there during the end of his presidency. When did you first become aware of President Biden's cognitive decline?
I don't have the expertise to judge on that.
Did you have conversations with Vice President Harris at any point about his cognitive decline?
Not that I can recall, no.
With that, I yield back to our chairman. Thank you for convening this hearing, and I appreciate your attention to all of our communities that we serve. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, gentleman. Yields back. Because we had some wave-on members on our side that went over, I'm going to yield 2 minutes to Mr. Lynch.
Thank you. I just want to update the gentleman on the most recent polls. You're right. The president did have favorable marks on his immigration policy early on, but since these snatch and grabs have started, he's underwater. 54% of the American people oppose him, his current policy, this active policy he's got going on right now. With that, I know, Governor Pritzker, you had a desire to fire back at some of the allegations to you. You have that opportunity now. I yield you as much time as you need, although if you have any left over, you can give it to your colleagues.
Appreciate it, and I am a sharer. I will thank you very much, Congressman, and let me just say that I'm so proud of my state and the way that we have operated, particularly in the last 6.5 years, to protect people. Public safety, so important in our state. I've increased the number of state police in Illinois, actually to highs that didn't exist even before my predecessor, the Republican governor. We also have done a lot to invest in violence prevention. And you've seen the result of that and the fact that we have banned assault weapons, that we have banned ghost guns. I would ask the members of Congress and the members of this committee to work to ban assault weapons across the United States. It worked back in the 1990s. It would work again if you pass it, to lower the crime rate, lower the homicide rate. We have so much work to do as a country on immigration reform. And I don't understand why at about 50-50, this Congress is about 50-50 between the two parties. Isn't it about time that you got together and got comprehensive immigration reform done? We've seen it over the last 40 years, attempts along the way. It always fails. Every time it's because of Republican members walking away from the table. You all are in control of the Congress and the presidency. You can get together with Democrats and get something put together that will secure our border and have a big door that allows people to come who are working hard, who will raise families in the United States and help our economy.
Governor Walz, I know you took some incoming today. You got any closing remarks?
That's part of it. I would just say, Chairman Comer, Acting Ranking Member, thank you to you. And I would like those folks sitting behind you and along the wall, thank you to all of you for accommodating this. Chairman, thank you specifically for accommodating our state schedule on budget. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Governor Hochul?
No, thank you for the opportunity again, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Lynch. Not sure what to say after today's experience, almost 8 hours of sitting here and not doing the work of the people of the state of New York, but here's what I want to say. My number one priority has always been and always will be keeping New Yorkers safe. I believe our policies and our laws, as implemented, do. Second point I want to make, I want to express my absolute outrage on what we've seen happen to a U.S. Senator in the United States of America, regardless of what anyone does, to have someone like that treated like a common criminal as if he was a threat and throw him down and have to handcuff him with 3 people shocks the conscience. And as a former member of this body, I hope we'll all stand up and condemn this and say we can do better. This is a great country. Let's make sure we ensure that it stays great.
Thank you. And Ms. Sky Perryman, I just want to say thank you to you for your help here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranking Member, and I'm going to assume you all haven't seen the entire tape at the beginning. I'm sure MSNBC or whoever sent you the clips have only shown you the end, but I think it'll be interesting when you see the entire clip of the incident with the senator. Before we close, I want to thank the Abraham family again for attending today. The purpose of this hearing is to try to get the illegal immigrants, the criminal illegal immigrants out of this country, and I think that's a goal that an overwhelming majority of Americans have. The governor said under oath that they were not sanctuary states and they would cooperate with the federal government. We'll see if that happens. That's good to hear, but we'll see if that happens. So with that, and without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witness. If there's no further business, again, I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I know it was a long day. Thank you so much, and thank you for your service. So without objection, the committee stands adjourned.